Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you.
I think, are you able to do it on presentation mode?
Is it? It should be. Is it not?
It still has like the
Your windows open.
bars. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have it in presenter view. Okay.
I mean, it looks okay.
I can fix it. Just 1 second.
There's still people joining, so it's good.
Let's see. Come on. Won't let me escape. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop share just for a second so I can fix this thing. How about now?
Yeah.
Good. We're good.
All right.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's session, Understanding Challenging Behavior, Sharing What Works. And if we can go to the next slide. Now we're going to go over our accessibility for those that are accessing Spanish interpretation in today's session. Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Voy a repasar el uso de interpretación en esta sesión. So, para interpretación, si por favor hacen clic en el icono que dice interpretation y se traduce a interpretación. Y si después de que haga clic ahí, si selecciona su idioma, que si necesita interpretación al español va a ser Spanish, español. Y si necesita ayuda adicional, por favor nos pueden dejar saber en el chat y Joyce nos va a estar ayudando a apoyar el chat el día de hoy para cualquier pregunta que tengan. Aquí las flechitas de colores les pueden mostrar lo que estoy hablando. Para seleccionar interpretación, donde está la flecha morada, van a hacer clic. Y luego para seleccionar el idioma, van a hacer Spanish, español. Y para el chat, en la flechita azul, ahí pueden escribir cualquier pregunta o si necesitan apoyo adicional para acceder al idioma de interpretación en español. Another thing is if you're having a hard time hearing the audio in English, you might have to switch or you might have to click on your language, English or Spanish. And if not, then you're fine. If you're hearing us good, then you don't have to do anything. But if you need support, if you can't hear the English audio, then you are probably going to have to choose English as well. And if we go to the next slide. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Just to let everyone know, we are recording this session so that we can share with those that are not able to be with us today. The recording is going to be uploaded to our abicommunity.org website and is going to be there for anyone to access this resource. If you have any questions during the presentations, we encourage you that you use the chat, and myself and Joyce, we're going to be monitoring the chat, and there's going to be a Q&A at the end of this session. Or you can also, during the presentation, ask the chat by unmuting yourself and asking your question. Next slide. So this is our staff. Our Northwest Disability Support. Today we here with you, it's me, my name is Maria Rangel, and I'm the Bilingual Programs Coordinator for Northwest Disability Support. I'm also a mom of 3 wonderful children who all have taught me to see life in 3 very different ways. And my older daughter, she's 16 and she experiences Down syndrome. And this is a very important topic that came into our lives, behavior. And I'm glad that we're talking about it today. And I'll go ahead and pass it to Marcella if you want to do an introduction, but I believe she's on the Spanish channel, helping us record this session in Spanish. So I don't think she can switch back, but Marcela is our web and design and digital communications. And Joycey, do you want to do an introduction?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Joycey, and my daughter is 5 years old, and she experiences Down syndrome. I am here just to support and be able to help you guys out in any questions you guys have for the interpreters. Thank you.
And then Angela Fromm is our programs director. She wasn't able to be here with us today. And then Shelly Johnson is our kindergarten inclusion program coordinator and educational advocate. And she's not here today as well, but I wanted to do a quick intro for them. And if we go to the next slide, please. We wish we had more time so that everyone could do introductions, but we can go ahead and start using the chat, and you can go ahead and introduce yourself there and connect with others participants in the session. If you're a parent or caregiver, you can write your child's name, age, your school district, and something you love about your child. If you're a professional, you can include your profession, title, your school district, and something you love about your work. Next slide. And so now we're on to the important piece of the presentation. I'll go ahead and introduce our guest speakers for tonight. We have Dave Andrews, an administrator with the Multnomah Early Childhood Program, MECP, and he has been working in the Portland area in early intervention, early childhood special education for 27 years. Dave's first 13 years were with Portland Public Schools and MECP as a speech language pathologist, working with children birth to 5 and their families. Dave has been an administrator with MECP since 2008. And then we also have Kevin Anderson, and Kevin has been an administrator with MECP since 2012. Prior to this, he was a middle school and elementary school assistant principal, a middle school learning specialist, and an autism specialist before moving to Oregon. He worked in both residential and school-based settings in Massachusetts for children with significant disabilities. And we have a poll that we're going to be doing. It's going to pop up on your screen. If you could take a minute to do it, we would really appreciate it. And then we can go ahead and continue with our presentation. I'm going to launch it. Everyone should be seeing a question. It's just one question. And the question is, how much do you know about behavior supports and what works? From 1 to 5, 1 being nothing to 5 being an expert. Okay, I still see some people answering. I'll give it a few more seconds and then we can, I'll be closing the poll. Okay, end of poll, and I'll close it, and then we can go ahead and give the floor to our presenters, Dave and Tim.
All right, thank you, Maria. It's really nice to be here in my living room. Unfortunately, you know, someday we'll get back and I'll be able to see everybody and get to know you a little more than we can right now over the computer. So all I can see is my PowerPoint, and you know, that's not very fun because we are social beings, but we are going to talk tonight about sharing what works and what doesn't work for your child. So our goal for tonight really is for you to be, when we go through our presentation and the different slide, to be thinking about your child, kind of relate what we're speaking to your child and situation, to be able to then share that information that you think about with your educational teams. And some of the things we'll cover tonight are, first, we're going to go into the escalation cycle. So when we talk about that, we're going to speak to what that is, and then you will have an opportunity to, you will have an opportunity to talk about, or to think about, what that looks like in your child. We're going to get into some prevention strategies and teaching to challenging behaviors, and also touch on some visual supports and communication systems. So all along throughout this evening, be sure to be thinking about how you can take this information, think about your own child, and share it with your educational team. Okay, so Kevin.
Right. Well, thank you all for having Dave and I here tonight. I am been watching the chat as Dave was talking, and I see we have representation from all around the state, and that is exciting. I really appreciate seeing people come from, I saw a Malheur person on there. That is great. So we are going to just start by talking about kind of, some of the language and some of the terms you may be hearing about when we talk about challenging behavior. What we have is, we have in front of us a kind of a diagram of what we would call the escalation cycle. So when we think about challenging behavior, we often think about, and you'll hear people talk about, children being in the green zone, children being in the yellow zone, and children being in the red zone. So what we're really talking about when we talk about these three areas, the green zone is where our children are when they are able to learn. This is when our children are alert and active, and we can this is our best opportunity for our children to learn. And in this, what we're talking about tonight, this is when we need to be teaching our children the skills that they need in order to avoid those instances where they get into a situation where challenging behavior suddenly appears. So we use prevention strategies to keep children in that green zone. These are those strategies that you as a parent know helps keep your child calm and ready to learn. As children start to head towards challenging behavior, we will often see something occur, which we're going to talk about triggers in a little bit. But we will see children start to escalate. We will see them start to kind of go up on this cycle. These could be as simple as you see their body become tense. They may get a look in their eye. You may see particular movements. You know your children best and can probably identify those things that let you know as a parent that something is about to happen or could happen. What's really important to know is that this is when we can intervene. We see the signs that our children are starting to become escalated. We still have that opportunity at that point to do some kind of intervention to avoid those unsafe behaviors. This is also where we will talk about what is the function of that behavior. So your child is starting to engage in challenging behaviors because it is working for them. There is something that they are getting out of that behavior that has been successful and continues to be successful. So when we hit this escalation, we still have the opportunity to do those individualized interventions, right? And that's we being the adults doing the interventions. Then when a child does reach that point of being unsafe, what is really important for us to remember and to address in that part of the cycle is that we are not learning and we are not trying to teach during that time. At that point, we really are just trying to address safety for our child, and we're trying to co-regulate with them. When they hit that point, what we are just trying to do is make sure that everyone in that environment is safe, yourself, your child, all the other people around. One thing to recognize, this graph always gets shown as this nice, slow, gradual increase. We know, you know, as parents, sometimes the distance between that little bit of escalation to unsafe behaviors is very, very short. You see a sign and you know that the unsafe or the challenging behavior is split seconds away or just a few seconds away. So we often see it as this nice gradual graph. We also know that it doesn't always occur that way. So that is something that is really important for you as parents and caregivers to be able to communicate to your teams that, you know, if your child escalates very quickly, that is very important for the teams to know. After a child has engaged in that challenging behavior or that unsafe behavior, it takes time for them to calm. Again, this is a time, the second yellow zone on the second part of the cycle, this is not time when we are teaching yet. So at that point of the cycle, all we are trying to do is help get them back to that point where they are able to learn again. So we're monitoring, we're maintaining safety, we're co-regulating with our child, we're starting to maybe introduce some options that we know are going to help bring them back to that green zone where they are again able to learn. So one of the most important pieces of this cycle when you hear about these zones and the escalation cycle is that really the most important piece for us is when children are in that green zone is when we have to do our work. Okay. So let us look at the escalation cycle for this is just an example of what an escalation worksheet looks like for a child. So what you can do with something like this is it is the observable behaviors that your child engages in when they are in the various stages of escalation. So what does it look like? What does it sound like? What are they doing? When your child is calm, what do they play with? What are they engaged in when they are calm? Are they drawing? Are they listening to music? Can they be sitting next to peers? Who do they play with? What are they playing with? So what kind of skills do they have when they're calm that we can then utilize during our teaching? The next stage is that trigger, or when you start to see the child escalate. So this, again, could be something where the child says something like, I want to go home, I don't like you. We may see them finish a task, and that lets us know that that could lead to agitation. You may see a child get up and start wandering the room. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So they're wandering the room and they're starting to go up that escalation cycle. So as you think about your own children or the children you care for, what is it that they do that you know as the parent has started them towards that point of potentially unsafe or challenging behavior? What does that look like? What does it sound like? What are those things? Because this, again, this is the spot where we are still able to provide intervention, to provide them some strategies or some supports to avoid the further escalation. So the triggers, the things that might cause your child to become agitated, you know, it could be as simple as they're going into school, right? It could be as simple as somebody took a toy. What are those triggers that may lead to it? And then what does it look like? So what does it look like, you know, in the example we have here, you know, the child puts a hand on the doorknob and then looks, right? So they haven't done the unsafe or the challenging behavior of eloping or running away, but they've gone to the door and they've put their hand on that handle and they're looking around the room to see who's paying attention. Then is the escalation continues and we know that the child is going to hit that peak or that point where challenging behavior starts to occur. Describing that behavior, what does it look like? So, because all children are different, right? All of your children have different behaviors that they engage in when they get to that point. So thinking about describing that behavior, in this example, they open the door, they leave the classroom. For many young children, right, this could be the hitting or scratching or biting. They may throw themselves down on the floor. You know, there are so many different behaviors that young children in particular can engage in that can be seen as unsafe or challenging. So this, you know, thinking about what does it look like for you or for your child when they engage in that behavior. And then thinking about how do we cool them down? What things does the child, how does it look when we know that they're kind of done and starting to calm? Do we see them taking deep breaths? Do they start to make eye contact with us again? Do they start to pay attention to what is going on? How do we know that the tantrum or the challenging behavior is finished and we're going to be heading back towards the time when we're able to actually teach again? And then the next sheet, next Dave. So the first sheet was about what does it look like for the child? Challenging behavior, addressing challenging behavior. I wish I could credit the person that I heard this from. I don't remember who I heard this from, but when I was learning about behavior and about teaching and about children, somebody said to me, the only behavior I have control over is my own. So, and really the ultimate piece of challenging behavior and the piece that we have control over is our own behavior. So in this escalation worksheet, this is not about the child. This is about the adults in that environment. And what are the adults doing while the child is in both the green, the yellow, and then, so what are we doing? So as a prevention strategy, as an adult, I'm giving positive attention. We're going to talk about, and I'm sure some of you have heard about 5 to 1. We can teach skills like deep breathing, like blowing out the candle. This is our opportunity to teach our rules, teach our expectations. We can be kind of sports casting. So when the child is in that green zone, what are we as adults doing to support them and stay there? As the child escalates, what is it, again, we as an adult can do? What strategies can we use to help avoid the challenging behavior? Can we use first then language? Can we do some teaching of rules or other expectations? Do we have clear, simple vocabulary we're using to avoid overwhelming the child? And then what do we do when we see that the child has begun to escalate? Now I, as an adult, have to start thinking about what do I need to do in order to avoid the child going into that red zone? Maybe it is offering 2 positive choices. Maybe I need to give them time. Maybe I'm still able to do some modeling of some breathing activities or something like that. And then when the child hits the red zone, what do we do so that everyone can remain calm and safe? I, as an adult, have to remain calm so that the children can eventually become back to the calm area. How do I focus on not escalating my own personal emotional state? So this worksheet kind of works through what are we as adults going to do as a child goes through that escalation. Dave, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you think about, I know previously in the kindergarten cohort, you've talked about the what works and what doesn't work. So this is really where that fits in, like what works for my child and what doesn't work for my child. What works might be anywhere along this cycle here. Like, what do I do to prevent? What do I do when I start to see my child amp up to that red zone? If they're in the yellow zone and orange zone, what are the strategies that I've found that work? Also, what might work during the calm down? How do I help calm my child down? So these are really important pieces that educational teams want to know. And really, the partnership that you're going to form or have formed or will form with your education team starts with this kind of thinking about the escalation cycle. What works? What doesn't work? What doesn't work if what amps my what triggers my child is like the what doesn't work possibly. So that's some things to think about. Okay, next, Kevin. Should I go on?
Yeah, you can go.
All right.
Muted.
Kevin and I, when we do Zoom calls, we're usually in opposite offices and then we can bang on the wall because we have shared walls. So I can say, Kevin, get in the Zoom call. But anyway, yeah. So the next thing we'd like to discuss tonight is you probably know this, that challenging behaviors always have a purpose. And the purpose is never to, well, not never, but most likely 99%, the challenging behavior is not an intent to hurt somebody or to make somebody feel bad. The intent and the purpose is always a message that the child has that they're trying to communicate. So the challenging behavior might appear when children are bored, or if they're feeling really sad about something or frustrated, or if they have their feelings hurt, or if they're really looking for attention. So we know that children exhibit these challenging behaviors when they're trying to obtain something or someone, like they're wanting attention from someone, or they're wanting something, or they're trying to avoid something. So they're avoiding, maybe they don't like circle time because it's overwhelming. So they start to exhibit these triggers, they start to show triggers and they're avoiding. So that's usually the intent is to avoid or to obtain. And also we see the challenging behavior when they don't have the social or communication skills. So if they're lagging skills, that they need to engage in more appropriate actions. And the other thing that Kevin already said is that, you know, if you see the same thing over and over, it's working for them. So the behavior that persists over time is working for the child. So what we really need to do is focus on teaching the child what to do in place of the challenging behavior. So they're going to have those feelings. They're going to be bored. They're going to be sad. Their feelings will get hurt sometimes. We're all humans. They're going to want attention. So we need to provide the tools to support kids to be able to communicate that. That's why communication is so important. Communication in so many different ways through visuals, which we're going to get into later, devices sometimes. And so that is this. And then I think you've probably,
matching the similarities, which child is getting help and which child is not. And I don't like doing it. I really don't. But just kind of comparing. Like my older stepson, Isaiah, my ex-husband's son, he didn't get any help when he was younger at all until he got into my care when he was 11 years old and able.
Sorry, I don't know what that was.
Was it a question?
What was it, a question?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you have a question, you can go ahead and please unmute yourself and ask the question. But I think that was someone, I think they forgot to mute themselves.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
That's fine. That's okay. That happens. So trying to get out of this to, whoa, there we go. So I'm going to share now this. You've probably seen this before, but this is the iceberg that I'm referring to. So you'll know that oftentimes the behaviors are what you see. So what you can see are the behaviors. You can see the running and the screaming and the hiding, and you know what those are. But behind that are the feelings that the child might have, the feelings that we can't see and we don't know unless they're communicating to us. So that's the concept of the iceberg. And that's kind of important to know that like these behaviors aren't to just be bad, right? So they don't want to be bad. Kids don't want to be bad. They are communicating a pretty strong emotion when you see challenging behaviors. And let's see. Are you seeing the PowerPoint again?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did see in the chat, I just saw, I don't know, somebody asked about if a de-escalation option is a hug or a physical touch. Dave and I aren't going to be able to comment about what individual education teams can or cannot do. Dave and I work with MECP, which is a very, our program. And so we're fortunate enough that in our program, we might, with the younger kids, we still can kind of engage in some of that. But I know that at the school age level, some of those pieces might not be available as they used to be. Again, that may be something that you can talk with the team about. Is there a way to give a child that kind of same feeling that doesn't then kind of cross a boundary that a school might have about a child and a teacher having some kind of physical interaction with a child. So.
And we invite you to join we have a special education IEP support every Thursday from 12 to 2, and Shelly and myself are there to help support you in any conversation, any support that you might need or ideas. And I'll have more information towards the end of the PowerPoint.
That looks good there.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
¿A qué hora vas a salir a trabajar mañana? Pues a la misma hora, a las 3. Pues porque a veces me van feliz.
I muted myself.
Okay.
Maria muted me for a moment. That's okay, Maria.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out where the microphone was.
I probably deserve
clicked
it.
on the wrong one. A reminder, if your microphone's on and you don't have a question, please go ahead and mute yourself so that we all have access to hearing our presenters tonight. Thank you.
I am guessing that many of you have heard about the pyramid model, or another acronym you may be very familiar with or have heard is PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. This is a framework that many school districts and early childhood programs have adopted as a way of thinking about how do we address behavior in our classrooms. And really, the reason we use a pyramid is we think about the base of the pyramid are all of those things that we put into place that just create the kind of atmosphere where children want to be and where children are able to learn. So what is it that a teacher or a classroom or a school does that helps create those nurturing relationships that allow all children to feel welcome? So it really does start, I mean, and right now, as we all know, effective workforce is at the base of that pyramid. That is something that we all have probably experienced, where that has been a challenge over the COVID times, the last few years. But then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are building an environment and a classroom environment where children feel supported. Children feel they want to be there. There are nurturing and positive relationships between the children and the adults, between the adults. These are what we call tier 1 level support. So those are those things that you're going to see when you walk into the classroom that are available to all children, right? It's seeing the daily schedule up on the wall. It's labeling various places throughout the classroom environment. What are those things that just kind of help create a great classroom for your child to be in? The next level up, what we call tier 2 supports, are those kind of more specific teaching that we are going to do, where we are going to teach specific social and emotional skills to the children. So sometimes we are teaching children, you know, in MECP, we teach the 3 Bs, right? We have all of our children learning how to be friendly, be safe, and be workers. But we also do additional teaching, and we're going to show an example here in a little bit of some very specific targeted social teaching that a teacher is going to engage in with a classroom. At the very, very top of the pyramid is what we call tier 3, or intensive individualized interventions. This is when you have a child with persistent, challenging behavior. You will reach a point where you will need an intensive individualized intervention or a positive behavior support plan for a child. One of the things that we know is that if you do not have those first 2 tiers, if you do not have that highly supportive environment, and if you do not have nurturing and responsive relationships, and you're not teaching those social skills, you are not going to be able to implement an individualized behavior support plan. These are very specific plans that involve the adults doing very specific and often very complex tasks to keep a child from escalating. So one of the things we always want to make sure is, do we have those tier 1 and tier 2 supports in place in our environment? It's just we in our program, we make sure we have all of these things in place before we ever get to some kind of individualized behavior support plan for a child.
Yes.
Okay.
Whoops.
We are going to take, or is this Ron, or is this?
Yeah, I think this is Ron.
All right.
Yes. So we at the Multnomah Early Childhood Program, we're fortunate to work with some of the highest quality support people in the country from the University of Colorado, Denver, who have strategies for challenging behavior and are really knowledgeable of the pyramid model that Kevin just went over. And this is a video that I'd like to show you about it's our friend Ron, who is a part of the national organization to support challenging behavior for preschoolers. But he's going to share a tier 1 strategy that I think is a really good strategy for everyone to be aware of. And I will share my screen in just a second here. Whoops, hold on, I gotta stop. Sorry about that. Didn't share my screen yet. Okay, here we go. All right, this is Ron.
Tier 1 is broken down into a couple of pieces. The first basic most piece is the building relationship piece. And this is the biggest part of the pyramid in itself. Sets the foundation, being able to understand the things that we do that take away from kids' emotional readiness for building that relationship. And we call this their emotional bank. And we think of this as a piggy bank account or a bank account. And the things that we do that take away from their emotional bank, like telling them, no, don't stop, or using negative language and not stating things in a positive way. We've come to understand it's not a one-to-one correspondence as far as this bank account. We know that it's a 5-to-1 ratio, 5 deposits that needs to go into their emotional bank for every one of those withdrawals. And so what we need to do as educators, as adults, is get better at making deposits into their emotional banks. Deposits are simple little things that we can do on a daily basis. One, and the biggest thing that I think we forget to do, just smile and be excited that they're there in our environment that day. To look at them, and I know it's hard to do this when we have little ones with challenging behaviors or that might push our buttons, that we look at them and say, we are excited that you're here because not only do I get to teach you, but you get to teach me. You get to teach me skills about how to interact with people, how to interact and modify curriculum. And it challenges me to be a better teacher just to have you around in our environment. So deposits, body language, smiling at our students, generally feeling excitement that they're there, getting down on their level, talking to them in a soft, nice tone of voice, not yelling across the room, those kind of things. So that's a start. Other things that we can do are deposits, commenting on what they're doing, specific praise. And what we mean by that is not saying just good job, but we're saying, good job keeping your hands to yourself. Good job sitting at the table and writing with that marker and things like that. So being very specific about the praise that we're giving them. What a withdrawal is that language that we use in our environments as well. We start with trying to eliminate no, don't stop. Saying those words are words that start making withdrawals within a child's emotional bank. But there's also other big withdrawals that we do on a daily basis that we don't ever think are withdrawals, such as just giving simple directives inside of our classroom. Something like saying, come over here to large group and have a seat. That's a withdrawal from their emotional bank. And we have to understand those directives that we give on a daily basis that are part of our routine, part of our classroom structure, things that we have to do are still withdrawals from their emotional bank and are going to need deposits in order to repair that relationship. If we take too many withdrawals from our students, then what happens is that they're left with nothing in their bank, and they end up shutting down. And that's why they don't want to follow our directions, why they don't want to follow classroom routines, why they have a difficult time being kind and friendly to their peers. It's because they've empty in their emotional bank, and the self-worth, the confidence that they have in themselves, the willingness to participate with their peers and interact with their peers is basically gone. Their emotional bank is with them all the time. And so it's not just within our school environment that they get withdrawals from their emotional bank. They're leaving to come to school with their mom, and their mom's in a hurry, and she's saying, put on your shoes, eat your breakfast, put on your seatbelt, we gotta go. Those are all withdrawals as well from their emotional bank. And a lot of our kids are coming to us already empty. And it's important for us to understand that.
Let's see. I'm going to mute. I'll keep going. Okay.
So when they walk in the door, we're ready to start repairing or making deposits into that emotional bank.
All right. So that was Ron, and I understand the link you have may not be working. So Maria, maybe we can somehow send out this link later, because the link that we have here is working, but I think on another one, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, everyone that's here today is going to receive a follow-up email with the PowerPoints and the recording of this session. So we will make sure that we send the one that the link directs you right to the videos.
Thank you. Great.
Right.
So here we go.
Before I get to one comment, that as I've watched that video of Ron multiple times, and for some reason I just started to think about how many of your children or the children you know, not only is maybe that word no withdrawal, for how many children is that no a trigger, right? Hearing that no is going to start them on that escalation cycle. I have two children myself, and so that came to mind. The next one we have, so we've talked about teaching, right? The real key to avoiding challenging behavior is teaching replacement behaviors. We need to be able to teach children the behaviors we want them to engage in when they are frustrated or they want something, right? So when are we teaching? We're teaching when the children are in that green zone. So let's talk about kind of a very, as Maria mentioned, I was an elementary vice principal. So I used to be out on the playground every day with the children. And how many times does a child go charging up to another child on the playground and push them down, right? Certainly an inappropriate behavior, but also could be for some children, that's how I'm inviting a child to play. I don't have another way of getting my friend to know I'm here and I want to play with them. So I'm going to push them. I certainly have their attention now. But what we're going to show is we're going to show a teacher who is actually taking that problem behavior and is now going to teach the replacement behavior of how do we get our friends' attention when we want to share or we want to play with them. So this is what we mean by that second tier of teaching social or emotional skills in a way that children are able to learn. Go ahead, Dave. I'll stop.
Okay. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
We talked about that for our social skill that we're doing share requests, right? Which means you're asking a friend. But what do we have to do before we ask them? Tap on them on the shoulder. Right. Like, listen, tap that block, please. You have to tap them, look at them, and get their attention, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So, you know what? Let's see if maybe Miss Tammy can come over and figure out how she would get a superstar. Sharon. Yes. May I have a blue block, please? Sure. Here you go. Do you want to build? Okay. So, would Miss Tammy get a superstar? Did she tap me on the shoulder? Did she look at me and say my name? And then she asked for a blue block. You know what? I'm going to see if I can do it, okay? Okay, let's see. Miss Tammy, can I have this? Well, I said, Miss Tammy, can I have this?
You didn't tap her on the shoulder.
Oh, I didn't?
No.
Oh.
No.
What else do I need to do? I have to tap her on the shoulder.
Say your name.
I need to say her name and look at her. Can I just grab it like that? Oh, do you think I should try again?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let's have to think here. I really want to play with those blocks. Miss Tammy, can I have a red block? Here. Thank you. Was that better?
Yeah.
Yay! Would I get a superstar?
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
You know what, Reese? I would like for you to come up and try. Come on up, Dayton. So, Reese, I want you to sit here. Okay, and Dayton, come on and sit over here. Okay, look at your friends. Turn around. Okay, and let's see if Reese can get a superstar. Okay, let's watch what he does. Okay, remember what to do, Reese? Okay, go for it.
Can I have that?
What do you think? Yay! Yes. So, well, that's a good point. But then he changed it and he said, can I have a blue block? Awesome job. Thank you guys for helping.
Okay.
So just a really, really great example of of teaching children how to go over, get their friends' attention and request an item. So, we have children who do not have that skill. They didn't learn that skill, so they engage in challenging behavior because that's what works for them. As Dave talked about in the beginning, they might push, they might shove, they might grab things because it has been working. Now, the lesson we saw was very much designed for all of the children in the class. It was a really good example of teaching a social emotional skill. But Dave's going to talk about how do we then support a child who might not learn that way.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So, yeah, the example you saw, we do a lot of that in our program. We teach our peers in all our community, in the community preschools and in our own preschools. We teach our peers how to do the skill of getting their friends' attention. And then when, for children that have IFSPs and IEPs, they might need a little more support learning this skill. So we use this visual support. When we're teaching them, we might sit with them and a couple of friends and go over it with them in this way. Like first, we're going to look at our friend, then we're going to say our friend's name, tap them on the shoulder and keep trying. So we might have a peer that's really good at that, come over and work with some other kids to help them to learn this same skill. But we really do need to break down the skill and we need to use visual supports. So that's what this visual is about getting my friends' attention. And there are many social skills that we can break down to share and to teach every child. So we also have visuals for sharing a toy or for asking for a toy. So there's steps that can be broken down and we need to break it down and we need to scaffold in order for all kids to learn this skill. So some other visuals that you may be familiar with are first then boards. So that means that we're not just going to say to a child, first you got to do this, then you got to do this, then you'll get that. That might be too much. So what we want to do is show them the picture of first we're going to do this, then we'll do something else, something exciting. So we often use first then boards for when we want to teach the child about what's coming next. And then emotion boards, of course, it's important to be able to share happy, sad, mad, and speak with pictures sometimes. And then also we're going to get into a little bit about routine within routine. So that means that there's a routine that happens. Let's say it's that circle time that you just saw. Or let's say it's going to the store. So going to the store is a routine, but within that routine, what's going to happen at the store? Well, first we're going to get in the car. Then we're going to drive to the store. Then we're going to get some, you'll sit in the cart while we pick up some milk and some other things at the store, right? And maybe you've got a visual of something that's really important that your child knows that they can get, so they have visual, match the visual to something they want to put in the cart, things like that. So routines within routines that are always the same. And Kevin's going to talk, before I go off, this link, which we'll also send, is the challenging behavior website where we get a lot of this. Let's see that. So Kevin's going to go over a routine within a routine that's broken down in a classroom.
I wish I didn't lecture.
So Giovanna, do you have a question? Oh, no, okay. I think she just unmuted herself.
Okay.
We can go ahead.
Okay. All of the strategies, so I'm going to talk about routines within routines, which is another phrase that we use a lot in our program. Ultimately, what we're talking about is we're talking about how do we build those prevention strategies? How do we build a classroom environment where challenging behavior is less likely to occur? So, we use those tier 2, we teach social emotional skills so that children won't engage in those challenging behaviors. One of the other reasons we often see children have challenging behavior is they really don't know what to expect or what are they supposed to be doing as they engage in their school day. So this is an example of a kind of a typical preschool type morning routine that a class might engage in. So we know that the class comes in and they have breakfast, they go to journal, they go to Miss LaShonda's table, and then after that is free play. That is an example of something. They might have a really great visual schedule of those 4 items. They'll have supports for the entire class to engage, to know kind of that is the typical routine of their class. But for some of our children with disabilities, we need to be thinking about these routines even more. So when the child goes to breakfast, what is the beginning part of coming to breakfast? So for this child, the beginning of breakfast is actually coming over and sitting down. And in this case, this team, we actually took this from a preschool class of kids about to go off to kindergarten. For this particular child, they've identified some skills in red that they are actively teaching during breakfast. So during breakfast for this particular child, at the beginning of breakfast, they actually need some additional teaching, some additional support over sitting down. So maybe this is a following directions goal for the child. We know that that is at the beginning. The middle of breakfast is where the child is given 2 choices of food options and they are able to make a choice. So the green indicates that middle of breakfast. Their child doesn't need to learn anything at that point. They are able to engage in that part of that routine independently or with very little support. The end of breakfast is identified by having a serving dish prompt all done. So so we know that breakfast is ending when there's some kind of serving dish prompt that relates to being all done. And for this particular child, they're teaching it looks like it's following directions of stand up. And they are going to be using social reinforcement and a tangible reinforcer. So they're actively going to be praising the child if they successfully stand up from breakfast. The next piece is, what do we do when breakfast is over? So as for many of the children that you know and you work with or you have, right, it's not only what am I doing now, but then what do I do next? And so in this case, for this child, they know that they're going to actually be using a transition tool. So this particular child in this breakfast routine is going to be handed a pencil, which is what indicates to that child it is time to go to journals. So while for 80% of the class, having just breakfast, journal, Miss LaShonda's table, and free play as a general schedule is going to work for 80%, 90% of those kids. For some children, we really want to break those down even more. So you can see for this class, they've done it for each one of their routines. So during journal, there's very specific things to be done at the beginning again, which is teaching sit down. They're working on choices again. They are doing something to be prompting that child for when they're all done. They're teaching him to show the teacher that he is all done. And then again, he gets another transition. So this child gets a tangible object that helps them go from journal to Miss LaShonda's table. So often for children with challenging behavior, we have to think about their day in these very discrete pieces. So not only is it going to Miss LaShonda's table, but what does it look like when I get to Miss LaShonda's table? What am I doing in the middle of, what am I doing while I'm at Miss LaShonda's table? And how do I know when I'm done? And where do I go next? This is the kind of information that some of our children are just not going to be able to kind of gather without additional teaching like this.
And to me, Kevin, this is before a behavior plan, right? So this is like a tier 2 kind of strategy where you're individualizing some things that you can do as an adult to support the child to not escalate during these different times of day.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the core board and communication because behavior is communication. And we need to not only teach those routines within routines like Kevin's talking about, but we also need to teach communication sometimes in a different way. So the thing to remember is that communication is not just labeling. So just having words or things on a board or words in the classroom, that's not enough because that's just the label. So many school districts are using this core board. And the core board consists of words that we use 70 to 80% of the time. So that includes words like I, need, open, in, out, off, on, all these different words that are not just labels. So the core board, I'm going to share an example here, is we've got the I, it, mine in the yellow. In the green, we have all these verbs, drink, eat, get. So get is a word we use a lot. And sometimes we fail to teach get. Go get it. So give, go. And then in the blue are some adjective words like happy, little, big, different, these are words we use all the time. So this core board is, if you think about the words you use every day, it's more than just labeling. So when you're at a snack time, for instance, or if you're working to teach your child to communicate through this kind of system, you need to speak in this system. So it's like a foreign language in a way. So if you're not speaking in the foreign language, if you're not speaking in Spanish or speaking in French, your child isn't going to learn Spanish or French. It's the same with speaking in pictures. So if you are using this every day, wherever you go, you go to the store and you say, I want you to come, and you're pointing to the words as you're doing it, then your child is being modeled this idea. So the core board is not only for a child to express themselves, because they're not going to unless there's the teaching piece. And the teaching piece is the adult using it to show and share how to use it. So getting back to my example, maybe it's bath time, or let's use well, lots of kids take baths, right? So yeah, let's say it's bath time, and you know that there are some specific toys that your child likes. So there do have to be labels. So you may put some labels of things that you know your child likes at the top above the line of the first pictures. And usually there's space for like a Velcro thing that you can interchange different words. And then you model it. Who wants do you want the boat? I don't know. What do kids play with in the bath these days? I don't know. So anyway, whatever there is, right? And then you model this. You can laminate this so it doesn't get all wet. You model this, and then they can start to use it. So that's the idea behind the core board. We will include these links. I don't think we really have time to watch them today. But these links will come to you, and there's a couple of video links that are interesting. One of these videos is kind of a good advocacy video for why we need to use core board words. And there's another video about how a family uses it. It's a cartoon, and there's no talking, it's all music, and then words appear. So those are a couple of videos that will give you the links for. There's the core board.
I do, before we jump into this, I think it's really, really exciting. I know that I have seen some core boards now being installed in playgrounds at elementary schools.
Yeah,
so
there's one at Cherry. There's one at Cherry Park. Yeah.
Yep, they're putting this prevention strategy. So they're using these strategies of how to help children communicate their wants and needs to other children. And now these visual systems are starting to go into playgrounds. So yes, Dave mentioned Cherry Park. I think there's going to be one going in Southeast Portland as well. I know of a site that might be implementing this in their play area.
That's great.
Yeah.
In Multnomah County, I think almost all the school districts are starting to use this system. So,
yeah, I love visuals and I love the core board. And I know that from my own experience, my daughter has limited verbal communication, and she uses an iPad, and she has a downloaded communication app. And there's something that you can work with your IEP team to so that your child has access to if they need to. So again, I welcome everyone to join our drop-in, and I'm going to have more information at the end, and we can discuss like further options about how you can get this for your child to school, to community services you might be connected to. And this helped my daughter's communication so much. At the beginning, I was a little hesitant to use it because I was so focused on, I want her to be verbal, and I don't want her to use this because I don't want her to get used to this and then not the verbal communication is just not going to happen. But to my surprise, once she started using this, her verbal communication went off the roof. And she uses it still. I mean, I'm her mom and people around her, we know exactly what she's saying, but some people that might not be around her all the time have a hard time understanding her. So she still uses it to communicate her needs and wants. And another quick thing is that once she started having an effective way of communicating and getting her needs met, and you know, whatever she wanted to say, she could say through it, a lot of her behaviors just disappeared. So communication is a big part of our children's behavior, especially those that have limited verbal communication. So this is great. I love that you guys are sharing this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
That's
Maria.
very important. Kids
Yeah.
need to have a voice. They have a right to have a voice. I can definitely say that. Okay.
Ultimately, so we do want to talk. Yeah, no, I'm ready, Dave. I
Okay.
can move to the next one. What Dave and I have really spent a lot of our time talking about are these tier 1 and tier 2 strategies. I mean, ultimately, you as your child's best advocate, you know your child best. You're the one at this point, as they're getting ready to go into kindergarten, who can help those school teams learn the pieces, learn the keys of your child's behavior that can prevent the challenging behavior. You know, you're going to be able to articulate, oh, when they start to do this, you know, when they stop making eye contact, when they start wandering the room, that's when I know that I need to, and because you as a parent have figured it out, right? Or, you know, have something that is working for you to help de-escalate those situations. If you do get into a situation, you are working with a school team, and you do start to hear them talking about challenging behavior, unsafe behavior, kind of those buzzwords that kind of lead you back to this presentation. One of the things you want to talk about is, you know, what is it that works for you at home? What do you know doesn't work? And asking about what kind of prevention strategies do they have in place? Are they teaching replacement skills? So if you have a child who pushes to get attention, are they teaching that child some other way of getting another child's attention? What kind of full classroom supports do the children have so that all children can thrive in that classroom? What I will say is, if you do get to the point of needing an individualized plan for your child, you as a parent should know that if a school is going to conduct a functional behavior assessment, you may hear them refer to it as an FBA, but it is a functional behavior assessment. You as a parent need to be attending that meeting and giving consent for that assessment. When we talk about developing those type of individualized supports, we really need to be looking at the data that needs to be collected. So how do we know what behaviors this individualized plan is addressing? So we have a very, we want to have a good description of the targeted behavior that the plan is going to focus on. We also want to have some information. We want to have some data about that behavior. When is it most likely to happen? Are there particular times of day where that behavior is more likely to occur? How often does it happen? Is it happening multiple times a day? Does it happen once a week? What kind of frequency does that behavior occur on that we are getting to the point of having an individualized intervention? And then again, so once you have given your consent for that assessment, the school team has collected all of that data and information, you again as a parent should be invited to the table to help write that behavior plan and have some input around what is going to happen. Ultimately, the behavior plan is really about what we as the adults, the ones who can control the behavior, right? I can control my behavior. So what am I doing in order to prevent that child from escalating, from having a triggering moment, right? What are we as a school doing to help prevent those things? What are we teaching before? How are we preventing it? And then ultimately, what are the pieces we have in place to make sure that everybody is safe? So I think it is important. And if you do get to that point where you hear a school team talking about these kind of assessments, if you hear them talking about it, Maria and Angela, this team is going to be your best resource and advocates to helping navigate that with you. We have 10 minutes, and I know Maria has a couple of other things at the end too.
Yeah, we can go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm going to stop recording just so that everyone knows. And then we can just, if you have a question, turn on your camera, ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions. And so I'll stop recording so that if you want to turn on your camera and audio, you're not going to be recorded anymore.
So I do